Hello, my name is Eric Kelly, and I am a finance professor in the Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, Tennessee. This is a walkthrough video of the Project Your Budget case, which is the preliminary round that we used in the individual competition at Excel on Rocky Top in 2024. This is all done in partnership with the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge, and this competition actually feeds into the a larger set of competitions that the Microsoft Excel Collegiate Challenge runs every year. And so this particular case is one that individual students had 30 minutes in classrooms to basically make as much progress as they possibly could in order to qualify for our local final round. We'll have another walkthrough of that case later, but for now, let's take a look at the Project Your Budget case. So here we are in the case itself, and as with most of these cases, there's going to be a set of general instructions at the beginning of the case, and so that's what we see here. This just introduces the student to what all is going on, the story that's being told in the case, and just generally what they need to do. The meat of the case is in each of these four tabs, and this case is designed to be done sequentially. Now, in each one of these tabs, there are some orange cells. Those are the inputs. And then there is a modeling area down below that students are encouraged to use. And then there are green cells. Those are going to be the output cells. And so questions 1 and 2 are here on the first tab. Now, getting to know the case itself, we'll see that the first tab asks the students to project housing costs over 5 years, and they're given an initial input and a rental price increase, and this is an annual increase. And in this particular tab, it specifies that increases are only going to happen once a year. They're going to have to navigate that and project their housing costs on a monthly basis for 5 years. Another part of a budget is typically a car expense. And so in this tab, we have the setup for a 5-year car loan. So back to our inputs again, we've got the cost of a car and a loan interest rate. And in this tab, students are tasked with creating an amortization schedule over 60 months so that they can determine what their payments will be. Third tab is a monthly spending tab. And again, we have a starting or a base monthly budget. We have an inflation rate, and so this is an annual inflation rate, so we can embed assumptions about how much prices are going to increase over time. And then this lookup month, this is a cell that we use to basically test and determine if students have the correct answer. That'll come into play here in a moment. But the spirit of this particular tab is to look over 60 months and start with the base budget and make 2 adjustments. One adjustment is a seasonality adjustment. And so it's based on these inputs here. So depending on if you're in month 1 through 12, i.e. January or December, you're going to spend either less than or more than your monthly budget based on these seasonality percentages. The other adjustment, of course, is inflation, and so there's some instructions in how to actually incorporate inflation. But you can imagine what that is: prices or the budget amount is going to increase each month in accordance with inflation. And we've got some answer boxes here to check and make sure all the model is set up correctly. And then in the final tab, everything comes together. And so in this tab, we've got 3 columns. We've got the rental amount, the car payment, and the monthly spending. Those are going to be pulled from the first three tabs that we already saw. And then we've got some parameters that determine what you do if you have excess funds. And so if you have excess funds, you're going to first pay down any credit card, and second, you're going to add into savings. If you are deficit, the first thing you're going to do is pull from savings if it exists. And if you don't have any savings, then you're going to have to increase your credit card balance. We also have in the parameters an expected market return. So that's going to be the rate that you earn on savings, and then a credit card interest rate. That will be of course, your cost of borrowing in credit cards. And so once this entire 5-year schedule is created, there are some questions here to check the answer. Now, importantly, for the student, these questions are in this order for a reason. So it basically, the case is basically set up so that students can work sequentially through the questions, and that will guide them with the building of the model. So that's the setup. So let's take a closer look and jump into the first tab. So let's take a close look at these instructions before we jump in. So our instruction is to model our rent costs for 5 years. So what do we know? The model is going to start in a January, so that's going to be month 1. So here we've got a January, that's month 1. And this is the amount of rent that we're starting with. Now, reading further along, we will see that rent will increase over time, but will only increase the first month of the year. So next January, rent will go up by 5%. In all other months, it will not increase. And so we need to code some logic into our model to account for that. So first things first, let's just link our initial rent to the input cell there, okay? Now let's step through the way this logic is going to work. So in this cell here, so this is the rent amount in month 2. I would like my rent to be same as the previous month if I'm in the same year. But once I am in a different year, so here, I want it to increase by, you got it, 5%. And so we can build all of this logic in with a simple if statement. Equals if, so what is my condition? My condition is, I want to know, is this year equal to the year in the previous cell? If it is, I want to just take the previous rent amount and enter it again. If it is not, I want to take the previous rent amount and multiply by 1 plus the inflation rate. I'm going to anchor that cell so that I can copy my formula down appropriately. And looks good so far. So let's go down to, we'll go down to the first month in the next year. There's our increase. So it's working. I'm going to continue copying this all the way down to the bottom. Control D. And now I've got my 5 years of rent forecast. So let's just check and see if I've got the right amount. So my answer here, first month of year 2, satisfies the hint. Total rent cost over 60 months. I'm going to do the sum of this entire column, and it ends in 0.09. So it looks like I have met the hint criteria. Let's head next over to the car loan tab. And so in this car loan tab, just scanning down, we can see that we're going to need to create an amortization schedule. So let's start with our inputs. And so here's our inputs. We've got the amount that's going to be financed, and we've got a loan rate expressed as an APR. So let's just do some quick calculations on the front end to get things set up. We know that this is going to be a monthly, along with monthly payments from the instructions above. Let's get to a monthly rate. So my monthly rate is going to be the APR divided by 12. And then let's get to a payment amount. And I can do that with the PMT function. So PMT, I need to give it a rate, a number of periods. My number of periods is going to be 60 because it's a 5-year loan with monthly payments. The PV is going to be this amount right here, and there is my payment. Now, because of the sign convention in these formulas, I've got a negative payment coming out. So let me put a negative sign here just to make that a positive number, so it'll come out all nice and clean. Let's start with my questions. What's the monthly interest rate? I've already calculated that, so just back to this cell. My hint is less than 1%. That does match up. What's the interest expense in month one? Okay, so in order to get to that answer as well as the others, it's going to be really useful to just go ahead and create the amortization schedule. So the way the amortization schedule works is each month we're going to have a beginning and ending balance. And so the beginning balance of a given month is always going to be the ending balance from the previous month. We're going to calculate our interest expense each month by multiplying the beginning loan balance by our periodic interest rate. Use an absolute reference there so I can copy here in a moment. The car payment amount is going to be this amount here. And so I can think of the interest expense as increasing the loan balance and then the car payment as decreasing it. So I can get to the end balance by starting with the beginning balance, add the amount of interest that accrues, subtract the payment, and then I have the ending balance. And so with everything that I have here, I can copy down, and I have a problem. So what's my problem? Looks like I forgot to anchor my payment. Let's anchor my payment, copy that down again. And now everything looks right. So I can see that start out owing $20,000. That decreases over time with equal payments. And finally, I end up with a zero balance at the. All right, so my amortization schedule passes the smell test. And so now I can start answering some questions. What's the interest payment in month one? The interest expense in month one, I'll point to this cell. Matches the hint. What's the loan's ending balance in month one? Ending balance in month one. Again, matches the hint. Total amount of payments over 5 years. So I can sum the payments amount and matches the hint. And the total amount of interest is my sum of this column here. And again, everything checks out. Along to our next tab. That next tab is the monthly spending tab. And so the idea here is we're going to take this amount in this cell, this monthly budget, and that's going to be our base spending. And so we're going to hold that constant throughout all 60 months. But the actual spending, or the actual monthly spending, is going to be the monthly budget adjusted in two ways. One, we're going to adjust for inflation. So that's going to trend up month by month throughout the entire 5-year series. And then second, we're going to include a seasonality factor. So that's going to adjust either up or down based on the calendar month or the month of the year, depending on seasonal factors. So this is sort of reasonable here, right? You think about more than normal spending in December. So maybe you're buying some Christmas gifts or doing something sort of at the end of the year. Also, perhaps more than normal in the summer. Maybe there's vacation or travel plans. Okay. But let's go here and work on this seasonality. So this seasonality factor, um, I'm going to use for reasons that you'll see in just a minute because I want to copy a formula down. I want to just start and make sure I have a formula working right. So I'm going to use a X lookup, and I'm going to look up. I'm going to look for the value 11. Now the 11 that I see in question 8 that actually came from this cell up here. So I'm going to look for that value. And so where am I going to look? Well, I'm going to look in this array here. I'm going to look in the month column. I'm going to anchor this because I'm going to ultimately want to do some copying. And what am I going to return? I'm going to return the seasonality factor. So that is this column here. All right, so ends in 7, so that looks right in accordance with the hint. So I've got this lookup function working. So I'll return to that in just a moment. Let's move on down. The monthly inflation rate. So the inflation rate that you are given up here in this cell, that's an annualized number. And so a monthly version of that is going to be, find it, going to be the inflation rate divided by 12. Okay, less than 1. That looks good as well. Okay, let's now skip on down to our table. So let's start by setting our base spending. So our base spending is going to be this value here. I'm going to anchor that. And I'm just going to copy that all the way down. Okay, so that's going to maintain constant. It may be constant throughout the series. Let's add our monthly seasonality factors in. That's gonna look like this formula right here. Let me enter the cell, Control A, select everything. Now Control C, so I'm copying the text of the formula. Control V. Okay, let's make a quick change. Change that I need to make is I want to reference not the cell up at the top, but I want to reference the month of the year cell. The month of the year. And there we go. And so I do not have my second argument anchored, and so that's going to copy down as I move down, and that's going to rotate from 1 to 12 and then back. And so let's just real quickly Control D to copy this down and see if this looks right. So there's my 82, 94, 102. Let's see if it starts over at month 1 again, 82, 94, 102. Looks good. Looks like these. Looks like my monthly seasonality factor's working okay. Now the inflation factor, recall that inflation, according to the instructions, is going to actually start in the first month. And so I'm going to create an inflation factor as 1 plus the monthly inflation rate. And I want to raise that by the number of months that have passed since the beginning. So the beginning is just prior to the first month. I need an exponent of 1 here. And now if I copy this down, make sure I have my monthly inflation rate anchored. Now if I copy that all the way down, the inflation rate should stay the same, should stay anchored to the cell above, and the exponent should vary with this column here. So, and by the way, I've been doing a trick here to quickly copy something down. So I'm going to the cell left of what I'm interested in, and I'm hitting Control down. That takes me to the bottom. Now I'm going to go over one cell to the right, and then I'm going to say Control Shift up arrow. That's going to take me all the way back to the top. And if I want to copy a formula down, my shortcut is Control D. So I hit Control D, and there is my series of monthly inflation factors. Okay, looks like I can enter some values here. What's the inflation factor in month 1? This amount ends in 0.003. What is the inflation factor in month 60? Ends in 1. Okay. Now, almost done here, actually. So monthly spending, you can remember there's 2 adjustments. I'm going to take the base spending, I'm going to multiply it by a seasonality factor, so that's going to adjust it down. And I'm going to multiply it by an inflation factor, that's going to adjust it up. Okay, so there's my updated monthly spending. I'm going to go all the way down again, Control Shift up, select everything, Control D. And now I've got my monthly spending copied all the way down as well. All right, so let's just fill in these values here. Monthly spending in month 1, monthly spending in month 2, and monthly spending in all 5 years. I'm gonna do a sum, select the whole column, and all my numbers again check out with my hints. Well, now it's time to bring everything together on this last budget tab. Now, let's do a little bit of preliminary work before we jump in. We know that we're going to have a rate that we earn on savings, and the annualized version of that is going to be this cell. But since we're going to be in a monthly framework, let's make the monthly savings rate going to be that number divided by 12. And then so we're also going to be, if we have a credit card balance, we're going to be accruing interest on a monthly basis. So we're going to do the credit card rate here. It's going to be this 21% APR divided by 12. Some other preliminaries that we need to take care of. We need to get our rent amount, car payment, and monthly spending set. So we'll get the rent amount, go to the housing, and I'm going to just I'm going to reference the entire array instead of one cell at a time. And so that's going to give me a spilled reference here. So notice that goes all the way down to 60. We'll do the same thing for the car payment. Back to my car payment tab. And finally, my monthly spending tab. We'll go to monthly spending after adjusting for both seasonality and inflation. So now again, we can go down, check, make sure those look right. Okay, so those columns are ready. Another couple of things I can do on the front end is get set up with my end balances to roll over. My beginning savings balance is going to equal the previous end, and the beginning credit card balance is going to equal the previous end as well. Okay, so you can see that this is already set up to link back to here, links back to the initial savings. We're going to take the monthly income, and in the instructions, it says that we're going to keep the monthly income static throughout. This is just a very conservative assumption here. You can always change that in a more realistic model. So what that means is I'm just going to go down here to my monthly income and reference this amount right here. And I copy that down, or Control D. I'll copy the constant amount down as it should be. Okay, so The best way to work through this, I believe, is just to go left to right on the first row. So let's see if we can get one month of spending set up correctly with the appropriate cell references. And then we'll just copy it all the way down. And if we've got everything right in that first row, then the entire model will populate. So let's start with, we need to build total spending for the month. Okay, so we've got three primary sources of spending: rent, car payment, and this other monthly spending that we had on our non-rent and car items. We're gonna have to add all that together, and then if there is a credit card balance, there will be some interest on that. So let's go ahead and get our credit card interest set. So that's going to be the we could take the beginning credit card balance or the end from the prior. I'm going to take the end and multiply that by my credit card rate. That needs to be anchored so that it will be reference the same cell as I copy down. See, it's zero, should be zero because you're starting out with no credit card debt. Now, total spending is just going to be the sum of these three items. Okay, so we can actually already go ahead and answer this first question. So total spending in month 1 is that amount. Okay, so answering that question 15 correctly does indicate to me that I'm on the right track as I'm moving forward. All right. So next calculation, let's go surplus or deficit. So a surplus is your income is more than your spending. A deficit is your income is less than your spending. So we can calculate this surplus / deficit by taking your income minus spending. Okay, so if that's a positive number, we're in a surplus. If that's a negative number, we're in a deficit. So I'm going to say plus is surplus minus is a deficit. Okay, actually didn't like that because it thinks it's a formula. Put a quote in front of it. There we go. That's just a note to okay. Surplus to credit cards, surplus to savings. Okay, so this is just the workflow of what happens to this number. So if this number is positive, we are first going to pay down any credit card balance that exists. So we need to check to see if there is a balance. And second, anything left over, we're going to send to savings. Okay, so we need some conditional logic. So in this cell then, so building that conditional logic, we only want a positive value to go into this cell if we have a surplus. So I'm going to say if this amount is greater than or equal to 0, then I'm going to put it in this cell. Otherwise, I want 0. Now, that's actually not quite right. There's another condition I need to check. Okay, so that other condition that I need to check is whether I actually have a credit card balance. If I don't have a credit card balance, and I don't, then I want a 0. And if I have a credit card balance that is greater than 0 and less than this amount, I only want to put the amount into this cell that exactly pays the credit card balance down 0. Well, that's easy enough to fix. So I'm going to say if we have a surplus, if cell I38 is positive, instead of putting the entire surplus into this cell, I'm going to say give me the minimum of the surplus amount and the credit card balance going into the period. Now that should shift down to 0. And we'll be able to fully flesh this out and test it later on when we do have a positive credit card balance. But let's move on for now. Okay, so what do I want to do for savings? I want to put, if there is a surplus, I want to put all of the surplus except whatever I put here to the credit card. I want that to go to savings. So my if statement again, I want to, first of all, check to see if we in fact have a surplus. So if I-38 is greater than or equal to 0, that would mean there's a surplus. Then I want to put surplus amount minus whatever I paid to the credit card here. Otherwise, I want a 0. So there, looks like I'm good. So these two numbers should always sum to the surplus if the surplus is positive. Okay. Okay, so now let's take care of deficits if they. Now remember, everything right now on the credit card and savings is keying off of this column. If this value here is positive, we have a surplus, and it's going to be split between these two columns, which means these are going to be 0. In contrast, if this value is negative, it's going to be split between these columns, and the surplus to credit card and surplus to savings are going to be 0. So we've already got the surplus to credit card and surplus to savings set up correctly, at least we think we do. We just now need to go and work on the deficit columns. And so again, we're going to have some conditional logic. But the condition here is now going to be if there's a deficit. So if surplus deficit number is less than 0, if it's negative, that's when we're going to do something here. I'm just going to start by just referencing the deficit cell. This is not quite right because there's another condition I'm going to have to check in just a moment. But I'm going to start by saying if the surplus deficit column is negative, I'm going to put that negative amount right here in savings. And otherwise, I'm going to say that is 0. So it works here because surplus deficit is positive. But the other thing I have to check, I can only draw from savings. So if this were a negative number, I could only draw from savings if I had that amount or more in savings. Otherwise, I'm going to have to send it to the credit card. So to better understand what I can take from savings, I'm just going to come up with some fictitious numbers up here so I can kind of figure out what these numbers should look like. So let's say savings balance is 100. And let's say the deficit is, we have a minus 150. So it's negative, so there is a deficit. So the most I can pull to meet that $150 deficit is 100. Okay. So I want to do a maximum, since I want a negative number. So maximum of the deficit amount and minus the savings balance. So that gets me with minus 100. So if deficit were minus 50, we would have the full amount coming out, minus 150. We only have the 100. So it's this max function that I want inside my if statement. So now when I come into this cell, I want the payment amount to be the maximum of I-138, which I know is a deficit, and minus the end savings balance. Close a parentheses there for my max function. Again, that's still going to be 0 here because I don't have a deficit. And one more cell, the deficit to the credit card. So again, if if I'm at a deficit, so if the surplus deficit cell is less than 0, what do I want to do? I want the remainder to go to the credit card. So I'm going to say this amount minus whatever I get from savings. Otherwise, I want 0. Now let's update our end balances. So we'll start with the end savings balance, and we need to go back and check instructions real quick. So up here in the instruction, we see right in here, compute savings returns after adding or subtracting the current month's flows to the beginning period balance. Okay, so what the heck does that mean? So I need to, going back here to the end savings balance, I want to take the beginning balance, and then I want to make any adjustments based on these. That's the current month's flows. And then I want to multiply by 1 plus my savings interest rate to get my end savings balance equals beginning savings balance plus, so the ones that affect savings are going to be this column, so plus the surplus to savings, plus the deficit from savings. Remember, that's going to be a negative number if it's populated, so that will reduce savings. Okay, so then, and wrap it in parentheses and multiply by 1 plus my savings rate, this one right here. Hit F4 to lock that in. Now I'll earn interest on the beginning balance and flows. Now we need to update the credit card balance. Since we have included credit card interest over here in our total spending, we've already accounted for that. And so all we need to do to update the end credit card balance is to take the beginning balance, subtract any surplus that went there, right? Because a positive number in that column is reduction in credit card balance. And then we're also going to need to subtract any deficit. So the deficit is a negative. So that's going to, subtracting a negative is going to make it a positive, and it's going to increase the credit card balance. So that should work there. All right. So I believe this entire row is working appropriately and can be copied down. Now here's the big test. Let's first copy these guys down. So Control down to the bottom, Control Shift up, Control D. Okay, I've got no credit card interest so far. Why? Because I'm not doing anything to update my credit card balance yet. Now let's copy all of these folks down and see what happens. Okay, so let's first of all, let's take a look at an instance where we have a deficit. So in our surpluses, we've got surpluses going to savings. There's our first deficit. That's gonna come from savings. And we can see that savings balance went down. Okay, that's good. Right, we're going to continue working down. We've got some deficits and we've got some surpluses, but we've got enough savings to account for those amounts until right here. What happens right here in this month? Now, all of a sudden, we cannot pull anything from savings. Sorry, we got a deficit from savings. We did not have the full $616 in savings. We only had $449.50, so that gets pulled from savings. The remainder goes to the credit card, and we see the credit card balance starting to increase. And at that point, we're going to see credit card interest starting to go up. And it looks like that unfortunately became a point of no return because we've got nothing but deficits thereafter. and we see massive growth in credit card debt, this final column. All right. Well, that's an unfortunate outcome, but hopefully the model is correct, and that actually is the outcome under these circumstances. So let's see if we got this right. So total spending in the first year, I'm going to sum up the total spending column. I want to select the first 12 rows. Ends in 70, looks good. What is the surplus deficit in month 1? 1. Okay, ends in 0.56. What is the total surplus or deficit in the first year? Sum first 12 rows in this column. Okay, ends in 70. What is the beginning savings balance in month 1? Ends in zeros. What's the absolute value of the deficit from savings in month 7? Equals absolute deficit from savings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ends in 02. What's the beginning savings balance in month 12? Beginning savings balance 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Month 12 ends in 65. What's the first month with 0 in savings balance? Let's do the next look up here. Looking for 0. Look up array. In savings balance. Month that is. 24 is divisible by 6. Absolute value of deficit to credit in that month. Go equals. Go index. Gotta be careful here. 1 is this row here. Deficit to credit. Month 24. 63, that looks good. What's the credit card interest in the next month? Equals index. Credit card interest next month. That row plus 1. Less than 3. Good. Total credit card interest. Sum credit card interest column. Ends in 57. End savings balance in month 60. The savings balance column there. Less than $1,000. Yep. End credit card balance in 60. Equal. Ends in 05. All right, everything again checks out. Well, there you have it. There's the solution, start to finish. Not the only way to solve this problem, but it is a way to solve the problem. So I hope you enjoy the walkthrough. Hope you do some this practice on your own, and I hope you develop these skills in a way that benefits you in the future. Thanks for watching.